Polite Society is a fun and often hilarious action comedy that boasts a majority female cast, with our lead character being British Pakistani. This representation is important for the film and refreshing for the action genre as an original story. The themes of sisterhood, ambition, feminism, and tradition also play leading roles in this narrative. The intrinsic value of each of those themes and how they can often clash with one another were on full display in this quirky film. Though the story was generally wholesome, fun, and absolutely hilarious, at times I was a bit thrown off by how over the top the plot was. A teenager going to such great lengths to preserve the life that she wants is honorable in a way, but in her case was perhaps a bit unhinged. And after all, this is an action comedy, but I think there were areas where the genre and narrative themes clashed. The absurdity was a style choice, and it's up to your subjective opinion whether or not you liked it. It didn't fully work for me here, though, and there are points where I felt it played at the expense of the film's tone for some moments that required more seriousness and concern, which ultimately jeopardized the film's effectiveness for me. More than anything, though, despite the prevalence of liberating concepts in the film's critique of oppressive ideas, it ultimately failed to subvert those ideas and instead ended up serving them.
It was madness. It's like the most bonkers thing I'd ever read. And there's like twists and turns. I was shocked at different pages, but I was also laughing out loud as I read it for the first time.
In the book Invited Understanding, edited by Sonia K. Foss and Cindy L. Griffin, we are presented with a novel way to look at rhetoric as an invitation to have a meeting of the minds, an opportunity to co-create meaning by allowing everyone to contribute their perspective and seek to understand one another versus the traditional goal of persuading other people. Persuasion within this construct is viewed as an act of dominance, manipulation, or even violence in certain contexts. Foss and Griffin present a useful definition of feminist rhetoric, and in particular, a description of self-determination that I would like to apply in this analysis. Although definitions of feminism vary, feminists generally are united by a set of basic principles: equality, eminent value, and self-determination. Grounded in their respect for others, self-determination allows individuals to make their own decisions about how they wish to live their lives. This principle involves a trust that others are doing the best they can at the moment and simply need to be unconditionally accepted as the experts on their own lives. Efforts by a writer to change those decisions are seen as a violation of their life worlds and the expertise they have developed. So to sort of give a quick synopsis of the film, Polite Society follows martial artist in training, Rhea Khan, who believes she must save her older sister, Lena, from her impending marriage. Our protagonist, Rhea Khan, is portrayed by Priya Kansara. She is a high school student whose dream is to be a stunt woman. She trains in martial arts class and trains independently at home while filming content for her online channel. She frequently writes to her favorite professional stunt woman, although she usually never responds. The only person who seems to mildly be supportive of Rhea's dream outside of her two friends is her sister, Lena. Her school teacher, classmates, and parents don't consider it a serious endeavor for her, often pushing for her to consider being a doctor instead. We have a clear picture of Rhea's aspirations being devalued by her peers and some very important figures in her life. They are undermining her self-determination by trying to persuade her to consider a more traditional and realistic career path. Tradition shows up in multiple ways in this film, the biggest being traditional roles of women and respectable careers for a woman in their social class. I think it's important to note here that Rhea's family is not wealthy, but they're not lower middle class either. Their economic class is high enough for their proximity to wealthy class to grant them access to those families and the opportunity to engage with them in their spaces. This eventually leads to our inciting incident where Lena gets involved with the wealthy bachelor Salim, but more on that in a bit. More evidence of Rhea's economic class is the fact that she attends a private all-girls school with classmates who are also presumably of upper middle class or higher, considering the father of her bully Kovacs is serving time for insider trading, and the students appear to have easy access to actors, doctors, and other professional figures for their internships. Further demonstrating the social norms of tradition and their economic class, there is a family dinner scene where the entire table scoffs at the father's suggestion for Lena to be a receptionist. The mother's concern was not because it didn't match Lena's dream, but because of how it would look. Rhea thinks it's absurd because she believes that Lena should instead be pursuing her art. In Rhea's mind, they are both rejecting traditional careers for alternative paths that are truer to what they want. The intrusion of tradition increases when the family attends a party of the mother's wealthy friend, Rahila, Salim's mother, which we eventually discover the party was a cover-up to help Rahila and Salim identify who would be the ideal candidate to marry him and birth her clone. The party is a visual representation of how these traditional rituals of partnering are in place to reproduce and maintain the same conditions that Rhea desperately wants to break from. Rhea's rebellious alliance with her sister becomes threatened after Salim takes an interest in Lena. She notices the subtle changes in her sister as she continues to date him. Rhea is later compelled to take action when she sees that Lena has trashed her art and is planning to marry Salim, which signals to Rhea a disposal of her freedom in exchange for the shackles of a traditional marriage. Since Rhea looks up to Lena as her trailblazer, who is now in danger of jeopardizing her path, the film's question becomes, can Rhea save Lena to preserve their dreams? Or an even broader question the film is asking, how can we protect our self-determination? At every turn, all of the adults in Rhea's life dismiss her dream. The biggest supporter of Rhea's dream of becoming a stunt woman is Lena, and her pursuit of art is further validation that Rhea can actually break free from tradition and follow her own path too. However, the further Lena pulls away from her art and slips into becoming a traditional wife, the less hope Rhea has for her own pursuit. The hero's journey is a recognizable form of storytelling that, when done right, can feel familiar yet provides some surprises while still being entertaining. There are many variations of the journey, but I would do a quick and dirty run through of what Rhea's arc looks like. Our character is determined to be a stunt woman. She trains all the time, but an early loss to her bully reveals that she still has a ways to go. Her sister is her biggest supporter by a mile. Other people not so much, but as long as she has Lena, she's okay to pursue a life that breaks tradition. Bam! In our inciting incident, Lena falls for a guy and intends to marry him and move away, which threatens Rhea's own aspirations. She assembles her team of friends to stop the marriage and save Lena from patriarchy. They try to get dirt on Salim, and it backfires into a conflict between Rhea and Lena. Rhea and the team then have an ethical fallout, and she is left on her own to sabotage Salim. This plan backfires again, and now Rhea is in a bad place with Lena and their parents. Rhea attempts to reconcile with Rahila and Salim, but uncovers the real danger Lena is in. She reconciles with her friends instead, and reassembles the team that now includes her former bully to once again try to save Lena. This leads to a final boss fight between Rhea and Rahila, where Rhea finally becomes a victor by successfully executing the kick she failed at the start of her journey. She and Lena escape, and now Rhea can confidently pursue her destiny, having defeated the immediate threat of oppression. So you might be thinking, yep, that just about sums it up. Our protagonist won. She saved Lena from an oppressive arrangement and preserved her dreams. She improved as a martial artist and restored her relationship with her sister. Where's the failure, dude? Yes, our protagonist does finally kind of get what she wants in the end, but at whose expense? Rhea's now inflated sense of autonomy was always at the sacrifice of Lena's. Rhea fails Lena and in turn fails herself.
We're not so different, you and I. I'm nothing like you.
So let's turn to the principle of self-determination from our definition of feminism offered by Foss and Griffin. Grounded in a respect for others, self-determination allows individuals to make their own decisions about how they wish to live their lives. This principle involves a trust that others are doing the best they can at the moment and simply need to be unconditionally accepted as the experts on their own lives. Efforts by a writer to change those decisions are seen as a violation of their life worlds and the expertise they have developed. Rhea and Rahila are two sides of the same coin. They both appear to only value Leah as the access to their self-determination without regard for Lena's. They deny her it, and no one views Lena as an expert on her own life, and they all seek to make decisions for her. Lena is clearly battling depression, but this is never taken as seriously as it should be. Everyone is preoccupied with how she can serve their interests, be it a progressive symbol for Rhea, the optics of social class for her mother, a problem to solve for her dad, or a vessel for Rahila and Salim. At no point in this film does anyone take a serious inquiry into what Lena wants or needs. In that family dinner scene earlier in the film where everyone at the table suggests what Lena's future plans will be, she just overlooks the discussion in despair. That is until, Rhea starts calling her an artist again, to which she tells her to leave it. And Rhea openly admits towards the end of the film that if I can't make it in what you want to do, then what are the chances for me? Lena supports Rhea's dream, but it often seems to be out of pity after much pestering. This might have been played for laughs, but this is one of the places where the film's tone clashed with its context. Lena's character is so obviously depressed and doesn't have the desire to even shower for her own hygiene most of the time. But here comes her little sister begging and dragging her out of bed, not to practice her art or do anything that would serve Lena, but to have her record a video for her.
Want to help me with a vid for my channel?
Again, play for laughs. It's as though the characters and the narrative do not take Lena seriously. I believe that Rhea is motivated by the idea of preserving her image of her sister and what it symbolizes for her, but not necessarily preserve Lena's autonomy. She wants Lena to be free to choose the life she wants, so long as the life she wants is as an artist. By trying to force Lena to choose to be an artist and reject being a wife, Rhea ultimately becomes another person invested in shaping Lena into someone who validates her ideas. But what does Lena want, though? Apart from the vile actions over Hila and Salim, which I'll get to in a minute, no one was forcing Lena to do anything. We can argue that Lena was at a low point in her life, which made her more vulnerable and perhaps rushed into things with Salim, but it's still all of her choosing. It's her own experience to shape and her own lesson to learn, if there is one. She changes the way she dresses on her own. She decided to date him on her own. She agreed to marry him on her own. And she was willing to leave her family and move to Singapore. And no one was forcing that onto her from what I could see. In the action fight scene between Rhea and Lena, that was so crazy, by the way, that I thought it was all Rhea's imagination until they both went down for dinner. Lena reveals why she gave up on her art. During their brawl, Rhea hurled her idealistic perceptions onto Lena after rejecting the often gendered notion that she was kind, saying, "You're arrogant, egotistical, you're an artist." Obviously, reassigning attributes that are typically viewed as okay for men, but not proper for women as a way to champion her sister as a rebel. But this is the image Rhea built up of her sister, not one that Lena has the responsibility to uphold. Then she tells her sister, "The Lena I know wouldn't give up on her art."
That was a phase, Rhea! This is me! This is me!
Bullshit! The Lena that I know would never give up on her art!
No, boo-hoo, she did!
Why?
Because I'm not good enough!
Lena gives a straight and explicit answer and seems to resent Rhea for forcing her to say it out loud. Rhea is understandably stunned, but ultimately does not accept Lena's decision. Perhaps Lena has internalized these unsupportive remarks from the people in her life, but we still can't deny her of her decision to let art go. Lena doesn't say that she was kicked out of school. She doesn't say a professor or her peers said she was a terrible artist. She simply states that she is not good enough. We can only assume that she decided that she did not meet her own standards and wants to let it go. It no longer brought her satisfaction, and this should be good enough. I want to take a moment to briefly walk through a few possible outcomes Lena could have faced if she had been affirmed in her decision to marry Salim and left for Singapore. The clone baby plot will be dismissed for the sake of grounding this example just for a second. So scenario one, they arrive there as newlyweds. Lena becomes a mother and raises their child as a stay-at-home wife. Scenario two, they arrive there as newlyweds. Lena becomes a mother and raises their child as a stay-at-home wife while also having the flexibility and resources to pursue her art or anything else she wants to. Scenario three, they arrive there as newlyweds and eventually things don't work out. Lena decides she needs to come back home ASAP. Her upper middle class and sympathetic family can afford to purchase a ticket to get her on the next flight back to Britain. No problem. There should be nothing wrong with Lena choosing to be a traditional wife if she wants to. The ability to opt out of the job market and be sustained on a single income is a rare privilege. And I'm not saying that domestic labor isn't labor, but there are a lot of women doing that on top of working outside of the home full time, thanks to unfair gender expectations. And to be honest, Salim's wealth would probably afford them domestic staff as well, further freeing Lena up to do whatever she consents to. The key here, though, is that she does have the support and resources outside of Salim to opt out of their relationship if she decides to at any time, preserving her autonomy. This would not be the case for so many other women, which is a reason why some people are against women entering into this sort of arrangement. If a woman lacks adequate resources and support outside of her partner, then if there ever comes a time when she wants out, she may have to stay simply because she can't survive outside of the relationship. Or if something happens to her partner and she doesn't have the adequate support, resources, or marketable skills for gainful employment, then she's in a tragic bind, especially here in the States where we don't have the economic safety nets that are features of similar nations. My only other caution would be that Salim's money does grant him a level of power and influence in society that could still be leveraged against Lena if he wanted to. So she's never fully safe within that dynamic, in my opinion, unless she came from a similarly wealthy family, but that's a risk she'll have to weigh. All that to say, Lena is empowered to both make and own her own decisions. But to our hero Rhea, Lena is a damsel in distress who needs to be saved from herself. So Rahila and Salim's objectification and exploitation of Lena was horrific. And this is another area where I'd say the film's tone betrayed it at times. As I mentioned, Rhea and Rahila are two sides of the same coin in denying Lena her autonomy for their own personal gain. Rahila represents everything that Rhea does not want to be. But honestly, they're a lot alike, and Rahila acknowledges this. The idea is that Rhea's motives are somehow more honorable than Rahila's, but how true is that when in both cases, Lena's self-determination is denied? Rahila and Salim's violation of Lena's autonomy through the theft of her consent is sinister. The mother-son duo wants to use Lena to carry Rahila's clone, so Salim's first violation of Lena's consent is in the deception of his motive to be with her. He's lying by omission. So the person Lena is falling for isn't actually who she thinks he is. It's a manipulation. Rahila, through Lena, desires to finally have the self-determination and life she was robbed of when she was married off immediately after finishing school. She says Lena is the perfect match. And how did she confirm this? Trigger warning for assault. She and Salim drugged Lena, then conducted tests on her. The tests were apparently so invasive that they caused her to continue to bleed out. When she discovered the blood in the bed, she figured she must have started her cycle. Later in the film, when Lena does finally discover what Salim did, she kicks the shit out of him for an extended period of time, makes a dick joke, and then flicks him off. But I think it's more played for laughs than the actual weight of the situation. And we hear sirens, but never see who the police were there to arrest since the sister sped off. I would love to see how justice would have played out, given how many people in the wedding came to Rahila's aid at her command, exemplifying the power and influence of wealth.
To see this like love story between the sisters, to see such empowered women be in this script, I was like, this is a no-brainer.
So did Rhea's journey reveal a story about how a young woman defended her self-determination? Or did it present a situation that just pushed the patriarchal rhetoric with a woman's face? I'm not exactly sure how Rhea evolved by the end of this film. The lesson from the plot appears to be that Rhea is a protector and she knows what's best for Lena. She was just as determined to be a stunt woman by the end of the film as she was in the beginning of the film. She never whined or wavered. I never felt like she was in any real threat of losing hope for herself. But Rhea, at every phase, refused to validate decisions of her sister. She made it her own responsibility to decide what Lena should want. She and Rahila both go to bizarre lengths in an attempt to realize their dreams through Lena. Even at the end of the film, when Rhea apologizes to Lena, it's for ruining her day. It's basically a tongue-in-cheek statement to say, sorry, I was right the whole time and saved your life. But she's not apologizing for trying to undermine her sister's decisions or force her to pursue something she doesn't want to pursue. She still, though, more subtly now, is suggestive of what Lena should consider. When Lena asked her what her plan was after whisking her away from Rahila and Salim, Rhea said to send her to her friend's parents' place packed with art supplies in case she felt like painting again. And Lena says she's going to take a minute to mull it over, with that familiar look of despair returned to her face for a brief moment. And I really feel like that was so powerful. I love that Manzoor allowed Lena to still be uncommitted to her art in the end, because so many other films I feel like would have tried to put a pretty bow on that to relieve the audience, but Lena's uncertainty and emotion just felt so true to her character to me. I will say that Rhea does mean well, and there is a virtue in a persuasion that is intended to protect the vulnerable, reform harmful institutions, or to liberate people. But Rhea is trying to make decisions on behalf of Lena instead of trusting Lena to make her own. Lena doesn't want to paint. I understand that Rhea doesn't want to see her sister throw away something that must have seemed so important to her one time, and she holds her in high regard for it, but it's not like saying no to art now means saying no to it forever. Does Rhea learn that she doesn't need Lena or anyone else to validate her dreams and aspirations, that the only validation she needs is her own? This is what I feel our character's journey should have led her to discover, not trying to control someone else's journey, or destiny rather. Why didn't the character use her passion to self-actualize instead? Could we imagine a story where ultimately it is Rhea who becomes so certain of herself and her passion for stunt work that she overcomes the doubt? And as a bonus, she captivates her family and classmates with her effort in the process. We sort of almost kind of get that here, but her intentions sabotage the merit. So what about the evolution of Rhea's relationship with her sister Lena? Another theme that was mentioned a lot in their media interviews was the story of sisterhood. Priya Kansara called it a love story between sisters. And I can actually see the elements of the conventional love story, especially in how Rhea chases her sister. They have the falling out and then she wins her back in the end. One could argue that they even had a stronger bond since Lena voluntarily filmed a video for Rhea this time. But is that really enough to say that their relationship grew in a meaningful way? Rhea is still gaining at the service of Lena, which is okay, but neither of them is empowered if the mutual support is not unconditional. Only Rhea has benefited from this dynamic in their relationship thus far. How will Lena be served? How would her needs be supported by Rhea? It all just feels so one-sided still by the end. We expect our relationships with children to be mostly one-sided because they rely on adult support for their survival and development. But this could have been a great coming-of-age story for Rhea, evolving into a young woman by learning to cultivate symbiotic relationships and preserving her self-determination. The sinister plot of Rahila and Salim that Rhea had to save Lena from kind of ruins the opportunity for our character to evolve, because now she can feel justified in her motives to sabotage Lena's self-determination because it was for her safety, though she was not aware that evil plot at the start of her, the initial start of her antics. She wanted to preserve their relationship and support Lena's dream to paint, but not support her regardless of what she chooses to do with her life. She settles for Lena saying she'll mull it over whether she paint again, but it's not explicitly clear if she'll respect any decision Lena comes up with. It felt more like a glass half full moment for her and like an optimistic win. Lena volunteering herself to shoot a video for Rhea's channel in the final scene takes us back to our familiar situation from the start of the story, but it's our supporting character that has changed, not our protagonist. Lena now serves as a support for Rhea without having to be dragged into doing it, and she still has not allowed herself to be forced into anything she doesn't want, i.e. painting. Ironically, Lena was an example of how to preserve your own self-determination while supporting other self-determination throughout the entire film. Was she the true hero the whole time? I just want to note some good things about this film. The performances were great, especially Priya and Ritu. The director and award-winning writer Nita Manzoor. It was her debut film, her debut feature film, and people work hard to break into this industry, and I'm rooting for the success of everyone involved. I'm glad that studios took a chance on a film like this, a cast like this writer, director. And though I think the film has its problems, I do want to see and support more films like this for sure, and see more from Nita as well. She started writing the script over 10 years ago and finally got it made, and I'm really happy she got her story out into the world, and I'm excited for what her style of storytelling and contribution to cinema could evolve into and mean for the industry moving forward. Based on the comments I've read, this film seemed to really resonate with some people, especially those with older sisters, and I think there's value in that. There can be nuance. Again, there are things about this film that didn't quite land for me, but that doesn't mean it does not also have some elements that worked well. Like I said, it got some genuine laughs out of me, and the action was fun. But check it out and let me know your thoughts. I'd love to know. But until next time, try to find some small ways to honor your self-determination and others in your everyday life.
Down with the patriarchy!
Let's